how do we protect our home, from the dangers of the internet. Our daughter was still 5 at the time. She was already using, it wasn't an iPad. I can't remember what it was back then, but we had a desktop at home, and she literally got on the desktop and she knew how to use it. It was almost instinctive. Like, we never actually had to teach any of our children how to use a computer. And I remember just asking around, I was a super technical guy back then, but a lot of the solutions that I implemented were very enterprise focused. So they were actually for my customers as a consultant. And I never really thought about, okay, how do I bring all these things home? So the same products that I implemented for my enterprise customers, some of those products cost, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I couldn't really afford those products in my own home, and plus it doesn't make sense to spend that much money, even if I had it, which I didn't. But it wouldn't make any sense to spend the same amount of money that, I call it enterprise grade security on a home, home environment, home network. So I actually went about just asking some of my colleagues that had older children, like, hey, how are you filtering internet, and how are you? And at that time, this is 2002, there were a few solutions out there, but, my background being ethical hacking, I always knew that no matter what solution you put in place, children are going to find a way to circumvent the solution. So instead of focusing, we still put filters in place, URL filtering, using a tool that basically sets up, it becomes your DNS. And so it basically filters what kind of sites you can access from your home network. There are ways to bypass that, but I didn't think, our 5-year-old was that savvy or inclined to bypass it. But one thing I found that is actually the most effective tool at that time was the values you put in your children. So you could put technical safeguards in place, and I'm not saying don't, still do them. But no matter how much technical safeguards you put on your home network or in an environment where children are, these children are savvy enough to bypass it. Like I remember when I was growing up, and my dad, both my mom and dad are retired professors. But when it comes to anything technical in the house, including operating the remote back then, they always called me to do it, including, changing the TV channel sometimes. And as a parent now, I'm actually in the same boat now. I actually find it easier just to ask one of my daughters to help me change the channel, or to, open Netflix on the TV. Not because I can't do it, but because I guess I have them here, so it might as well just have them do it for me. And the reason why I bring that up is the younger generation always have a tendency to be more technical savvy than the older generation. I think it's just an age thing. Even if you grew up in technology like me, at some point, the younger generation is going to out-tech you, if I can, coin that phrase. So they're going to outbeat you when it comes to technology. So the only thing that you can really, really bank on is teaching them values that is actually, in my opinion, more effective than technical safeguards or technology safeguards. And what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that is just letting them know the dangers of the wild, wild web. So I call it, every time you type in www, in the US, we have the whole thing about the wild, wild west, which was, back then, people just did whatever they wanted to do. They were outlaws. The wild, wild web is every time we go online, we go into that wild, wild web. It's good. So there are good things happening in the wild, wild web, but there are also terrible things happening. So one of the good things is us being able to deliver this message, to people all over the world. using a platform that 20 years ago we wouldn't even have dreamt about, using the internet, using the tools, using innovation like this type of platform we're using. But on the flip side, we also have the really dark side, as Opeyemi alluded to, of the Wild Wild Web. So there's the open web that we know, that we mostly go to, and then there's the dark web, which is kind of the underbelly. I always call it the underbelly or the underworld of the Wild Wild Web. And that's where a lot of really, really terrible things go on. So I always say the values is probably the best investment you can make in your children. Teaching them the values, teaching them the difference between right and wrong. In my experience, it was based on my faith, as a Christian, and my wife's faith as a Christian as well. And it was also based on our upbringing, the cultural, the values, that we were taught, as children, and even as adults. I'm still learning that. So I would say that's probably the biggest or the best countermeasure, the most effective countermeasure. And I can expand a little bit more on that, as we get into the panel.
As we go on. All right, thank you, Mr. Lambo. Yeah, so you've actually, two things I'm picking from here, and dear participants, I hope you're taking notes. Two things I'm picking from here: protect your home, and what are your values? Raise your children to have good values. And the foundation of any security solutions or what have you is basically the values that you instill in your children. It's not a do as I say, but rather do as I do. So Mrs. Odene Elamde, please, could you please jump in here? What have you got to say, just to further buttress what Mr. Lambo has just mentioned? What's your take on what parents need to know and do as regards cyber safety?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Lola. And fantastic. I like the way that we have started. Some of the key things that I've taken, and I'm just going to start from where he stopped, is the fact that, now the most important thing you can do for your children is have that conversation. We need to keep talking. Talk, and more talk. The talking never stops because children keep growing. So the way you will talk to an average 5-year-old or a 3-year-old about online safety or internet safety is not the same way you would be talking to a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old. It's different levels of understanding, and all of that. Even though the information is pretty much the same, but the level of exposure is different. Just like you wouldn't have a 3-year-old on Instagram, for instance, unless, maybe the parents are celebrating and they're selling their brand. But an average 16-year-old, 13, 14-year, they are on Instagram right now. So the way you would be talking to them would totally be different. So I totally agree with that. And like I said, it's talk, and more talk. And I like the fact that Mr. Lambo also buttressed the fact that whether or not you've put the parental controls in place, I always tell parents, at times it's a false sense of security, especially when you haven't had that talk with them. They are digital natives. They will get around the technologies. They usually do. The most important thing is to have had the talk. Teach your child the way to go, really. Because I tell people, if you put the controls in place at home and they can't access this, they can't access that, what happens when they leave your house and go to a friend's place? What happens when there are no controls there? I tell parents the most important thing is to teach your children to be the ambassadors you want them to be. So when they walk into a place and somebody's doing something wrong, easily they can say, oh no, sorry, that movie is age 13, we're just 10, we're not allowed to watch it. And then they can explain to their mates why they're not being allowed to watch it. A few of the other things that I talk to parents about is the fact that, when we were growing up, the way we were brought up is totally different from the way you'll be bringing up digital natives. I don't support you blocking technology. It won't work. We have seen that the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. But as much as we want them to explore the positive sides of the internet, we also need to let them know that, hey, there are a lot of bad things happening out there. and they must learn to build the confidence and build, themselves in such a way that even when the negatives are coming up, they can quickly shut down. I know children who will say, oh, when they see a funny chat or anything, they shut down their laptops and they go to a trusted adult to have a conversation. That's the way it should be. Parents, please, we need to learn to stop shouting and screaming at everything. It won't work. It never does. I tell parents, let your children come to you with anything and everything. Let them talk to you. Everything and anything. There is no topic that is off bounds with your child. Let them come to you. Because if you refuse to answer that question, somebody else will answer that question. And I'm sure it's not the answer that you would be expecting that the person will give them. So we need to provide a sense of guidance. We need to guide them along the path. Just like we won't tell people to ban cars before we teach our children to cross the road. It's no longer about physical security anymore. It's also about online security. So you need to teach them the do's, the don'ts, the good and the bad. They need to know. And it's not just saying, okay, I don't want you to go to a particular website. Children nowadays will ask questions. We never used to ask questions. Once they gave you an instruction, that was it, hook, line, sinker, you took it. But now they would ask, sorry, mommy, why? I thought you said smoking was bad, but that man on TV is smoking. You need to be able to explain to them in their own language. When I talk to teenagers, I've learned a lot of slangs now. When I talk to teenagers, I try to talk in their language so that they understand what I'm trying to say. Oh, if you see any funny thing online, omo, jackpot, and they all laugh, but they understand the importance of what I've just said because I've used their language. So come down to their level. Let's talk to them as, as children. Let's explain to them, and then let's continue to talk. So put all the necessary measures you should put in place at home, like Mr. Lambo has said. But don't give yourself the false sense of security that, oh, I've done everything I should do at home and that's fine. No, we need to keep the conversation going, regardless of the age of the child. An average 2-year-old now knows what the symbol of YouTube looks like. An average, just give them the phone. That's where they go. That's the first thing that they do. They are aware. But have you sat down to have the talk with them? Oh, sorry, darling. Oh, so what websites do you like to visit? Oh, really? Can I see the game you're playing? Oh, how do you play it? Can you teach me? And I tell parents, there's nothing, you have to keep learning. The day you stop to learn is the day that you die. So you must learn. You must learn technology, learn the technologies that they use, understand how it works, and then you can have the talk with them. So we must just keep learning and keep the conversations open. That is what I would like to add. Yeah.
Thank you, Lamide. And quickly, we'll get Mr. Olubile's take on that as well. Over to you, Mr. Olubile. What parents need to know and what they need to do.
You are muted yourself. You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Olubile.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But you need to speak loud.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, better, sir.
Thank you very much for organizing this webinar. I really want to appreciate my friend, Okweyemi Onifade, who has been one of the lights in the industry. I also would like to appreciate Mr. Tai Lambo, who give us his time, and my sister there, Olamide Odinaya, who has been doing great in this area. Basically, I would just add one or two things from the context of the cyber threats. What are those threats that our kids are exposed to, and what should the parents do? Please, you also permit me that I will need to be very fast. Try as much as possible to pack everything together within just probably 5 minutes. Now,
it's okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Now, over the course of year, in the FABMA 2010, my organization, I'm the chairman of the Global Network for Cyber Solutions. We propose, after we've done some findings in the industry, after a spate of years engaging and all that, we proposed in 2010 the need for Nigeria to have a framework on the Nigerian Child Online Protection Initiative, which was adopted by the NCC. And then in that capacity, the NCC now decided to go ahead and to implement some of the provisions, but which unfortunately has been affected by various changes in the administrations and all that. But I think it is very important for us to even understand the cyber threats that's facing our children, and also for the parents to be aware that we can no longer, pretending, or we can no longer be ignorant of what is going on around us. Cyberspace, or what I can call a digital lifestyle, or a space for everyone on the internet, has become a way of life. It has become a culture. We can no longer pretend that the culture is not real. It is real. It is a space that has a lot of benefits, and it's a space that can impact everyone if we use it appropriately. But notwithstanding, in spite of that, we also discovered that cyberspace has its own side of the game. We have the other side of the cyber space, which has to do threat online. The threat are threats that are particularly targeted toward the children, because the children are vulnerable, and because of their vulnerable nature, they can easily be deceived, and they can be targeted, by the cyber criminal syndicate, and they can be recruited, they can be brainwashed, and they can be deceived. Now, I just want us to look at the overview of this cyber threat, the nature of cyber threat that are very peculiar to us, that we are so much that is around us here. It's not far. I usually do not want us to talk far away. Let's talk from what is happening around us here. Now, number one of it, you have what you call anonymous sharing of information online. See, the anonymous sharing of information online is a situation where someone online decides to engage you without having to tell you its identity. And then sometimes they use a fake name, or they use what they call avatar. But behind those avatar, you don't know the human being that is operating with a child. And that is so very common. And from our findings, we have discovered that over 75% of parents that are surveyed actually view anonymous sharing, this anonymous sharing as not really unsafe, but somehow they are being, a legitimate concern. That it's important for a child to know who they are talking to. It is important for a child to know about the content that they have been fed. And it's important for a child to understand the communication medium they are engaging. These are part of the things that actually becomes an issue. Then you also have direct messaging. The messaging on the social media platform that we have on WhatsApp, like my sister said, you see, we can no longer deny our child or our children the access to some of this technology. But now a parent has to do something. He has to actually get involved in the awareness process. That parent must do everything to understand what it is to engage on this, social direct messaging. So direct messaging also has its own, issue. For example, when you have a direct message that have a filter that connects with friends, family, and strangers online, it's quite easy for that child to be tracked and to be followed. And that this message is asking sometimes for personal information deceitfully, and sometimes they ask for password, they ask for credit card, they ask for PIN number. Just because in the process of communicating with a child, you find that the child can be exploited, his mindset can be exploited. Now, you also have what I can call email attachment and links. The email attachment, sometimes they look very, very, how can I put it? They look very innocent. Attachment can be blackmail. It can be like in form of it can be in form of how can I put it now? It can be in form of a first how can I put it? They can use the name of someone close to that child to send email to a child. They can impersonate a family member, someone can personate a friend close to that child. The moment the child click on that email attachment, it has released, malicious software that could take control of that child systems and what they call botnet. A botnet is a system that take control of the system that child have. That botnet began to, communicate with the child along the way, and the child will be thinking that he's doing the right thing, but actually that system is actually taking that child to a particular direction, which might be injurious to a child or which might compromise the system that child is operating on. So it is very, very important for us to understand this and also understand that phishing email is not really about it's not about technical issues. It's about the social vulnerability of a child. When a child is deceived, when someone anonymously sends an impersonated email in form of attachment, sometimes you may say, your mommy asked me to send this to you. And he mentioned the name of the mommy. Before you know what, a child goes in there and downloads it, and it becomes a problem. Another one is the video streaming. You see, nowadays, we discover that the children are so much more fascinated by videos. And I keep on saying to my own children here that please, I said, mobile devices, they are not toys. They are machines that has an adverse reaction and adverse effect on the child. But now we have the world of television programs, we have cable networks, we have what have you. You have what have you. A lot of things is going on. You have video sites like YouTube, which in itself is secured. But sometimes there are side comments, side links that when a child click on it to divert and the primary intention of that child to get access to a particular video. So these are things that we need to understand that YouTube is good, but a parent needs to understand that there is a need for him or her to play a critical responsibility in guiding that child. Then you have the one that every child loves to do, that is online video gaming. You find yourself contending with your child every day. It has become what I can call a placebo. It's something that when a child is sick or a child is not wanting to obey you or whatever, all you need to do, just give a child a video game and tell him that, see, if you do this, I will allow you to have access to the video game. Before you know what, that child will go into places and come back. What I'm saying in essence is that, kids love video game, and especially those that let them share the experience and all that. Almost every video game today, many of them are good, but I can tell you behind most of these video games, especially those ones that are free, there have malicious softwares, there are attachments, there are scripts, coded scripts that have been attached with those emails. The moment a child download it, I had a bad experience in my house here. I have a system, allocated for the family and all that. My kids are just, downloading all manner of stuff. Sometimes I see strange USB. Before I knew what happened, the whole system got freezed. And we thought it's something that we could do. But at the end of the day, the malicious software in the system took over all the system. So it cost us substantial investment for us to not only to buy the system back, to even install all the software that we are put in there for the education purposes. So it is important that a child is aware of the threat that could be, that is available to them online. Then the question now came to me that what should we tell a parent to do in order to safeguard these kids? What can we do? In what manner can we? Number one, I will say that every parent needs to be proactive and not reactive. Just like my sister said, it is not every time that you complain, it's not every time that you beat and all that. We need to be proactive. That is, we also need to be involved. We need to be involved in the culture, in the digital culture. Because if not, you are going to have a counter culture that could come from the internet that could bring a child in total rebellion to that parent. Then as a parent, we also need to set up a parental controls. Some of these parental controls are embedded in most, if not all. We should keep our kids safe and consider executing a multi-layer approach. What I mean by that, that is, as you put on a parental control on the TV, put it also on your system and ensure that on the application, you know about the parental control. On the devices, you know about the parental control. Those measures are there. They have been designed. They have been embedded by design by the manufacturer of these devices. Then also they need to protect the child password. The fact is that you don't allow child to create his own password. You create the password for a child. When you do that, then as the child continues to engage online, you also engage along with him, but don't disrupt him. Let him flow naturally. But when you begin to see that the child is drilling, or you are seeing something strange, that is when you can come in. And when you come in, let it not be that the child will see you as an intruder, so that the child will not end up being scared. So it is very important for a parent to be proactive in that manner. Then also, I also have what they can call a password sentence. A complex password can easily be created. All we need to do is to frame a sentence. You can say, I love my daddy at number 9 Lagbaja Street. I love my daddy at number 9 Lagbaja Street off Onipanu. All you need to do is to create the initial of those phrase sentence and put them together. It forms a complex password. And I can tell you, a child can easily cram a complex password. So, and then not only that, every time, maybe every month or every once in a month, once in 2 months, that password, a child should have that culture of changing the password. And these are things that the last point, which is not the least, it's the need for us to consider a cybersecurity investment. The parent to stay ahead of the growing threats. There are threats around you, right inside your home. A child can be exploited, can be brainwashed. A child, let me give a short story within just 1 minute. A child got to a point of 16 years old, and the parent and the uncle decided to buy and who used an iPhone, and they gave it to a child, a daughter. But the daughter was very excited, and then the parents were like, wow, this is cool. Within the space of 1 year, the child got murdered. When they began the investigation, they discovered that this child has had a list of contact, complete stranger contact, and he has got and the daughter and this lady or this girl got involved in so many dating engagements. At the end of the day, they discovered her body by the beach, all because you see the girl has been given. When you give a child a phone, it is like giving a child a gun. Because a gun, a child that is not properly trained, aware of the danger of that gun, it could as well turn the gun to someone else and shoot that person or shoot himself too. So this is just very important for us to have. Now, let me stop here.
So there's a question here. At what age do you suggest a child should be left alone to handle on his own? Who wants to answer that?
Okay.
I would like Madam Olamide Odeneye. Mothers have no, like
the funniest thing.
Mother's intuition.
Yes, mother's intuition. My wife is listening in, and we are still waiting for our permission for our son to
exactly.
have phone.
Yes.
So,
the honest truth is we get that question a lot. When do you think is the appropriate age to give my child a tab? When do you think is the appropriate age to give my son a phone? The honest truth is that there is no age, because it differs from parent to parent and child to child.
It's not set in stone.
It's not set in stone. It's not. But I tell people, if you have not sat down to have the conversation, if your child is not aware of the negatives that are online, then such a child has no reason to have a personal phone or a tab that is connected to the internet. One of our major problems is this. It's a show. You know, I just gave my son an iPhone. If your neighbor gives their son an iPhone, it's not your child. So you need to note that. It's very important. If you've not had the conversation, I tell people, I don't see any reason why a child should be on social media before the age of 16. It's just unfortunate that now with schooling, you know, it's one of the things I noted that when Mr. Olubile was talking. Now that we have a lot of online schooling going on, more and more children have access to devices.
True.
Are parents supervising? Are they monitoring? Have they put in place the things that they need to put in place? So the honest truth is, it varies. I have a 10-year-old that has a mobile phone. I gave my son a mobile phone at the age of 8, not internet enabled. I gave him a phone in case of emergency, ICE, and all the numbers were stored on it, speed dial, in case of emergencies. Now that they've started online schooling, yes, I had to upgrade and give him a phone that was internet enabled for school period only. Not only have we had the talk, I have also ensured that every parental control that is available on that device, I have also set it up. I'm happy Mr. Olubile mentioned the use of passwords. I tell you, your child just has to share their password. I don't understand. You need to know what the password is so that at intervals you can go through what they're doing and understand where you need to nip some things in the bud and have further conversations.
I like that, so that parents can go with particle teeth. One of the things you have said, one, have a value-based conversation with your child.
Very important.
Let's start with the values, because it's not enough to just tell the child, don't do this. They need to know why you didn't do that. If you actually raising them to be intelligent. So we need to be able to have that conversation. And then you talk
very
about
important. Yes.
Password, of course, we teach don't share your password. But as far as a child is concerned, you have to trust
the mom and the dad.
No, you need to. I want to make reference that maybe I'll put it on the chat. If you haven't seen the movie Searching, please. If you haven't seen that movie as a parent, Searching, yes. Searching, yes.
Okay.
If you haven't seen
can children watch it? Can you watch it with your child?
Yes, you can.
Is it child appropriate?
You can.
Is it? Okay.
Okay. So Searching, that's the assignment.
Searching, yes.
Let's look for it on Netflix.
Watch that movie Searching, and then you would understand the reason why, as a parent, not only do you need to be technology savvy, you also need to understand some certain things. When your child is, if you have a relationship with your child, if anything is off, you will know. And then you will know what to do and how to step in. So if you haven't seen that movie, please go watch it. Searching.
I've not seen it, and I'm going to look for it.
Please, you have to.
Madam Odene. I want to go to Mr. Lambo. Attribution, and what are the cyber safety tips in that book? I know you took time to write a book. I'm sure it's because of your love for children, and you have two of your own, and you understand the challenges of the cyberspace, the opportunity and the risk. And you've been helping organizations to protect themselves. How much more the little ones? So tell us more. What can we glean from that book, Attribution?
Thank you. Thanks, Okwayemi, and thanks to my esteemed panelists for all the great contributions. So I'm a reluctant author. I published this book in January of this year. So it's on Amazon, Kindle, as well as paperback. You could actually order it from Amazon. And I just got the audio version approved. So it should be on iTunes probably in the next 7 days, as well as Audible. So I would highly recommend, if you have teenagers that are children or young adults, I would highly recommend that you get this book in their hands. I even had, so I've been, before the COVID-19 thing broke out or came to the US, I did some speaking engagements, and one of the people that, and I gave out copies on behalf of my institute, the HISP Institute. And one of the parents actually shared with me that she's been reading the book with her son, almost like a bedtime story. And I'm like, wow, I never thought anybody would want to read this book to their children. I guess if you want to put them to sleep, you probably want to give them a book like this, with the hopes that they'll probably learn something. But let me tell you what the book is about without giving it away. So Attribution is a fictional novella that brings awareness to social injustice, cybersecurity, family breakdown, and autism by detailing 40 weeks in the life of a 14-year-old ninth grader from Atlanta. So ninth grader, typically they start school here at 5, so that's a 14-year-old, who went from being a straight A student, winning a hackathon while he was at school, experiencing parental separation and expulsion from school. So just think about, within 40 weeks, this child goes from being on top of the world to being expelled from school, and then ending up as a national security threat and surviving a drone attack in a remote location in Montana. So why did I write this book? So this 14-year-old kid could have been me when I was 14. So when I was 14, I realized I had a knack for breaking things. And if I was in the US, luckily I grew up in Nigeria, and I grew up with parents that, their integrity, their faith, their values are impeccable. So they were able to instill in me the difference between right and wrong. And those values were really what made me not turn out like this kid, Ben. And also the fact that my parents have been married almost 50 years, that also had played a major, major role. So the first reason why I was inspired to write this book was to bring awareness to global issues such as social injustice, cybersecurity, family breakdown, and autism, because that also has a role to play. Secondly, to highlight the enormous challenge of attribution in social as well as cyberspaces. So the topic of attribution is about finding a reason. Like if something happens, you want to find somebody to blame. If somebody does something, you want to say, okay, why did they do it? So there's a famous story here in the US of a guy called Willie Sutton, who was a bank robber. He was called the Great Bank Robber. And they asked him, they said, why do you rob banks? And his response was, guess what his response was? That's where the money is. And they were probably expecting him to say, oh, I had a bad childhood, I'm poor, daddy didn't cuddle me, didn't take me to the park, mommy didn't cook jollof rice for me, or burger or what have you. And that's not what he said. He said, the bank is where the money is. That's why I rob banks. So, his attribution was very, very simple. It wasn't complicated at all. So attribution is a very, very tough thing in cybersecurity. So every time somebody is being indicted for a hack, typically that's really where the evidence is pointing. It doesn't actually mean they're the ones that did it. Somebody may have set them up. So that's a topic I've always struggled with in my 23 years in information security and cybersecurity. I actually used to run honeypots in the UK, and we found it very hard to sometimes figure out who basically was behind a particular malware. If you're familiar with the concept of HoneyNet and honeypots, honeynet.org.uk, I founded that group almost 20 years ago. So attribution has always been a very, very tough challenge. But in cyberspace, it's one thing, but in social spaces, it's another challenge. Like, why do people turn out to be criminals? Why do they decide to become 419? Some people, it's because they're desperate. Some people, it's because they came from a rich family, but they still didn't learn those values, of integrity, of doing the right thing. So that's a big, big topic for me. And then the third reason was to inspire the younger generation to avoid the dark sides of social as well as cyberspaces. So, and then to also help us fill the dire skills shortage we have in the industry. So we have a skills shortage. We also have a diversity shortage. So that's kind of the passion behind the book. So the book came out in January. It's a novella. It's about 30,000 words. And we're actually now working on part 2. And at some point, I'm actually hoping to turn it into a movie. either here in the US or maybe, Nollywood may be an option as well. But the real thing that actually triggered me saying I have to write this book was a guy called Marcus Hutchins. You guys probably heard about him. You heard about the WannaCry ransomware attack that hit the UK, the National Health Service. So because I spent 10 years in the UK, I'm actually familiar with people like him. When I first got into cybersecurity, a lot of the hacks we saw in the UK were like just teenagers hacking into the local authority or the police department. And there was a particular case of a teenager that was arrested. And when he went into the local police station, he actually managed to get his friends on the outside to release him. Because as they were taking him through the police, office, he saw them write he saw the password of the custody system on the chalkboard. So he literally just called his friends and he said, I have the password to the system. Can you get into the network and release me from custody? So that was I don't know whether it was a myth, but that was rumors that went around in cybersecurity circles back then. And this kid was like maybe 14 or 15. So with Marcus, what Marcus actually did was that he stopped the WannaCry ransomware from reaching the US. And because of the difference in the time zone, he was actually able to, he was called an accidental hero. And 3, maybe 4 months after that happened, he started working with the UK authorities. He became a celebrity overnight. He actually came to Las Vegas to, I think it's either Black Hat or DEF CON. And on his way back to the UK, he's from the UK, is a mixed race kid. We used to call them half caste back then, but that's not very politically correct now. So mixed race. So he's a mixed race kid. His father is Black from Jamaica. His mom is white. And while he was waiting to board his flight, he was apprehended by the FBI. And so anyway, I posted the link to the chat session. It's a very interesting story. I actually met the guy who covered him, Andy Greenberg. I met him at an RSA event in San Francisco in February, but I didn't even know Andy was already working on a story on Marcus. But Marcus is almost like a Ben from my book. How do you go from being at the top of the world to being, most wanted? I mean, that is a big lesson that I think we can teach our children, because the wild, wild web is like, even with a phone or a laptop at home or whatever, it's like, think about the worst areas of your society. Think about areas in Lagos or Abuja that you probably don't want to go to at midnight. Think about areas in the world that you probably don't want to go to. There's prostitution, there's drug dealing, there's, hired assassins being hired. Like, think about the worst places that you can think of. And just think about bringing those places into your home.
Wow.
That's what the internet allows you to do. It's pretty scary. But it has good sides, but you have to be conscious of the dark sides. And that's really what I'm trying to showcase in this book.
I started
All
reading
right,
the
thank
book.
you very much.
Yet to be done, but I would like
No
Mrs. Ajala to answer this question. Somebody said, should cyber safety issues be part of the curriculum of the schools? Should it be part of the curriculum?
Yes,
okay.
it should.
Either Mrs. Ajala or Mrs. Odene.
Yes.
Okay, let me hand over to you, Lamde.
I want mothers to answer this. Mothers. What do you think?
Well, yes, totally should be. And I think I'm aware that, they've started the process here in Nigeria to ensure that online safety becomes a part of the primary school curriculum. The idea is to quickly catch them young. So I know they've had discussions and all of that about that. It's very important. One of the things that we do at Child Online Safety is to visit schools and get to talk to children. Not only children, but also get to talk to their parents when they have their parents' forums and things like that. And we also have our own parents forum where we bring together different parents, different schools to talk to them about it. It's very important. The truth of the matter is that a lot of parents are not aware. That's the truth. Education and awareness are our strongest tools yet. We just have to keep preaching the message. One child at a time. That's what I tell everybody. We need to do it more often. The truth is that if you send out a poll now, you'll be shocked. You will be shocked. Mr. Olugbele shared a story, and the truth of the matter is that things are happening here in Nigeria, whether we want to accept it or not. Unfortunately, a lot of things, we keep quiet about it, but things are going on. When there was the Blue Whale Challenge, do you know how many children in Nigeria committed suicide, age 15 to 17? Children actually killed themselves because that's what the Blue Whale Challenge does. That's how it starts. And you know, the target usually are vulnerable children who are those very quiet ones who don't really have a lot of friends. You know, their parents are so busy and things like that. And then finally, a stranger starts to talk to you and has taken an interest in you. It's only normal for a child who doesn't have a friend to start to relate with that person. And the person begins to give you little tasks, things to do. And then you begin to excel and they keep pushing until they push you over the edge. The final thing is either to maim you or to kill you. So you have an unknowing child at age 16 just put a belt around themselves and, you know, they hang themselves. The idea is that they'll just do it for about 3 minutes. Let's see how strong you are. And then it leads to that.
Maybe you should tie your answer to this question.
Okay, what's the question, sir?
Okay, how do you, there's an 18-year-old, your 18-year-olds, you know.
Okay.
Sometimes, you know, you want them to enjoy their privacy, and then you also want to be interested in what they're doing. How do you do this without making them feel uncomfortable? Because that's also very important.
Yes, it is very important. Yes. Well, the truth of the matter is that children are also allowed some sense of privacy. We're still fighting, you know, we're still fighting those rights for them, you know, right to privacy, you know, things like that. But the truth of the matter is that if you haven't built that relationship, you need to let your child know that I am there for you no matter what happens. I've got your back. I have got your back. Feel free to come and talk to me about anything. Like I said, not everything requires you shout. There's no need to shout. There's nothing wrong with your 6-year-old coming to tell you she has a crush on a boy in her class. She's growing up socially. It will happen. The idea is for you to laugh about it at first and then try to find out more information and then direct her or guide her along that path properly. I tell people when I go to parents forum in my children's school, I don't go there because I want to listen to what the school has to say, honestly. It's first and foremost because I want to meet the parents of the children that my children don't stop talking about. You know, they are just this set of children. They will come home from school and, oh, Tariola did this. Jumoke now said, Mojupe now. Those are the names, you know, you keep hearing them over and over again. It's very important to meet the parents of such children. Develop a relationship. Throw play dates, let them come to the house, and then you can assess the kind of relationships your children are keeping. So like I said, let your children know that you have their backs. I'm your friend. I'm first and foremost your parents. I love you. Anything I'm doing right now is because I want to ensure that things go properly for you in life. Children don't understand, especially when they get to the teenage. That's the invincible age. Oh, I've arrived, I can do everything. And then they get to start to overshare and do a lot of things that Mr. Olugbele said. And job search now, digital footprints. That's why I still want you to watch searching. People will go back and check what you've done online. What have you posted? What kind of person are you? Okay, and that can hamper your future. So please develop the relationship. You just need to be friends with you. Boy, girl, any age, come down to their level, speak their language, and then I'm sure you'll have a breakthrough. They won't hide anything from you. They'll be free to come home first and talk first before they talk to their peers outside.
Can I just echo?
Yes. I want the daddies to talk about, we've heard from the mommies, I want the daddies to talk about issues around parental controls. What are the features? Are there technical features? Are there administrative features that parents should be aware of so that they can apply these tools? Over to you, Mr. Lambo, then we hear from Mr. Olugbele.
I think, I mean, I really want to echo what Madame Odene said. I mean, it's, the technical tools are good, you know, and I'll probably sound like a broken record again, but I'll say so let me give you an example. Because we raised our kids with those values, there are sometimes that I would be watching a movie, my wife and I would be watching a movie, and our daughter would get up because she doesn't feel comfortable watching the movie. It's nothing bad, but it's either there's too much cursing, there's too much violence, and she just get up. And that challenges me because that's what we taught her, right? And maybe she's even taking it to the extreme, but that's what we taught her. Because it's just not her taste. Like, I'm not interested in this. And we leave her to do it. We don't force her. We don't say, oh, you know, you're being an SU or whatever. You know, I think SU is probably not no more in vogue in Nigeria, but you get my point. We don't judge her based on that because those are the values we taught her. But I'll say technical controls would be, there are a lot of tools out there now that allows you to snoop on your children. If you think maybe they're doing something that is going to harm them, you know, maybe illegal, I think as parents, obviously make sure the law allows you to do that. The last thing you want to go to is go to jail because you're snooping on your own children that are minors. So because they do have privacy rights. But in terms of just blocking out bad stuff, I would say, you know, I use OpenDNS. There's a product called, and I never push products, but that's the product we've always used at home. What OpenDNS does, it allows you to forward all your traffic to a domain name server that filters. Not only does it filter, you can basically define what categories you don't want. Not only does it allow you to block certain categories and have like a blacklist and stuff like that, it also prevents malware. So since we started using OpenDNS, we've had 0 malware infections on our home network. All the traffic goes through that. Now, if they have a phone and they have a data plan on their phone and they use their phone as a hotspot and they connect their laptop or desktop to the phone, that bypasses your OpenDNS at home. So my point being, there are still ways around these controls. So you do the basic you can do. You don't leave it wide open, like you don't let the prostitutes and the drug dealers and, you know, the child traffickers into your home through the internet, because they're there through the internet. They're literally at the fingertips of your children. But you also instill those values in your children that are actually more effective than the technical controls.
Okay, Mr. Olubele, do you want to add something? I can see you there, but I can't see your video. But do you want to say something to this? You know, what are the, you know, as a father, for example, you know, because we don't want mommies only going to schools and knowing things, and daddies just think mommies have it covered. Are there things daddies can do? Maybe not the soft things, but the hard things as well.
Well, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've listened to the speakers. Well, from the context of what father can do, I would say that father usually are responsible in creating the rules and also enforcing the rule in a manner that will be inclusive of everyone. Just like what my sister said, the rule is not made for man, but man is not made for the rules, but the rules is made for the man. The essence of the rule is to engender values, just like what Mr. Taimbo said. You see, we need to move from the contemporary values to digital values, and this is where I will probably use this to address 2 key points that you raised earlier. At what point will you allow a child to use a system, to use a mobile device? I usually like to look at scenarios in the world, trends and styles, and especially when those trends and styles are coming from the maker of the technology themselves. let me refer to one of them, Bill Gates. He said that that he will not allow any of his child to have access to the internet or to have a digital mobile phone until they get to the age of 14 years. Now, if Bill Gates can say that, if that can come up, if that kind of stance can come from Bill Gates, it means that there's more to reach. It says a lot about the need for us to determine what appropriate age can we give. Can we say that we can allow a child to start having a smartphone? Now, for me, what I've done, which probably I can share with our stakeholders here, is that I have different sort of variations. I have different ages in my house, from 14, 15, 13, whatever, up to 8. So I've seen contests among them. But what I've done, we have implemented a policy that a digital mobile phone will not be given to you until you get to the age of 12 years. Even at that time, if I were to give it to you, it will be without SIM card, so that if you need access to the internet, you have to connect to the daddy's Wi-Fi, and daddy needs to have your password. Then the mommy, you also need to play our own part to ensure that a child is properly trained along the line with the school homework. And applying that, we have been able to inculcate a kind of digital values among the children. But now, I wouldn't say that a child should be given a phone at the age of 6, at the age of 8 or whatever, because there are critical reasons why a child should not use phone at that age. Number one, the health issues. Like I said earlier, mobile phones are not toys. They are machines. They are machines that emit radiations. And then those radiations can impact the developmental stage, the maturity stage of the brain of the child. If radiation starts, emanating from a mobile phone, that will have adverse impact on the health of the child. Then again, you have the issues of phone battery itself. Phone battery can explode. I've seen a situation where a child sleeps with a phone and he plays the phone as a phone is a toy. So now I think the most important thing for us to do here is to expose the risk to everybody. Let everybody see clearly the risk and the danger in it. Now, this risk are of 5 to 6 fold. You have the personal risk to that child. Let the child get to know the risk involved. What will happen if you don't do this? This is what will happen. Let him see that. Then you have a risk to the family. Let the family understand that, see, this is the risk that we are exposed to. Immediately the family gets to understand that, then everybody will not have to, will have the role to play. Then you also have a social risk in the context that if a child can compromise the security of a community. What do I mean by that? Now, you are in an estate and you are in a forum of the estate, but because of the fact that your child plays with your phone and use your phone to do whatever, if you case not take him, the security of those on phone can also be, compromised through the use of that mobile phone by the child. A child can set information or can allow, information to be filtered to unauthorized person. Now, there's also the risk aspect, the economic risk itself, which has to do with syndicates online. They are always looking for a vulnerable child to either recruit or to exploit. Then you now have the final, which is national security risk. Now, that national security is come in the context of a brainwashing and a recruiting of child. We have seen a scenario in Middle East where children are recruited right from their house, right from their homes. They are recruited into the terrorist organization. So what I'm saying in essence is that for us to be able to address all this, a family needs to have a digital family strategy, or what we can call a basic, simple digital family plan. And that plan is inherent on what should everybody do in the context of safeguarding the family, in the context of even harness the benefit of internet that we impact not only the child and everyone. There's something I've done.
Okay.
Can I quickly share that?
Okay, yeah, before you share that, because there are some questions coming on here, and then we have just about 15 minutes to go. Mrs. Ajala.
Okay, just within 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, Mrs. Ajala, this question is to you. Okay, please hold on, sir. This question is to you. There are schools who are not interested in what we are talking about now. And even when there are volunteers who want to talk to their children or the students about it, they still don't show interest. They don't give opportunity, even though it's free. How do you convince such schools? I'm asking that because, you know, this is what you do, and then you also have children in schools. How will you convince, for example, as a parent in your school, the school that your children attend, how do you convince them to give opportunity for talks like this?
Well,
okay, so go ahead. And then
in the school my children attend, there's an open door policy whereby you can actually walk in and engage. And even if there's this fence or this wall that certain schools may put up as written by this the person asking these questions, that how do you convince such schools? Now, a webinar like this is one of the ways, you know, but then you really can't force them. Engage, try and convince them, try and let them know the benefits of having such talks. Because you see, many schools or a school like this will probably just be doing it because they don't know. They don't know the importance and they don't know why their children need to be protected. Because if the child is affected, if the child is targeted, by and large, it still affects the school. Because such a child that hasn't been protected is now vulnerable. This child has been targeted or is a victim. That child can take it further to the school. So we ensure, or we try to make such a school see the reasons, the benefits of having that kind of talk or having that kind of program that, you know, communicates information security and cyber security to the students.
Okay, so I mean, in a nutshell, we need to learn how to develop good relationship with the school.
With the
so
school,
for
and
example,
engage
and just working. There's likelihood that they may not trust you to come and talk to their children. So you need to establish that trust.
Relationship and trust.
Relationship with the school.
Open lines of communication.
There's another question here, and Mrs. Odeneye may want to answer if she's there. Given an increase in sexual abuse and molestation with some perpetrators coming from the homes, how do we ensure kids' confidentiality and safety while seeking online counseling? Okay, so it's online counseling and all of those. I mean, COVID, for example, has transformed us digitally. You know, some people have done more technology in 1 month than they've done in 10 years.
Yes, in 10 years.
Because of COVID. So, sure. I mean, what do you have to say to this? Our time is running fast and the conversation is getting sweeter, or we need to run.
Okay, sir. So the question now boils down to how do we do the reporting systems, or how do we safeguard the children who are being sexually exploited at home? Did I get that right?
Yeah, yes. Most of the sexual abuse is from the house, and sometimes people want, children want to seek online counseling. No, how do we ensure that their confidentiality is secured and all of that? Because I mean, it's something that people.
Well, I don't know about other states, but I know that Lagos State has a helpline, where you can do anonymous reporting of things of such nature, domestic abuse, violence, you know, sexual abuse towards children and things like that. There's an anonymous, and it's a toll-free line. So all the child just needs to have is access to any mobile phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. It's a toll-free line where they can call and report if anything is going on. I don't know if that is obtainable everywhere else, but I know in Lagos State, we have an agency that has been set up by the Lagos State government outside things that private individuals are doing with their own NGOs. But we have such things in place, and the privacy of the child is first and foremost the most important thing. Nobody goes around to make that type of announcement or make that type of noise. But another problem that we've discovered with things like that is even when the child steps forward, we've had issues where it is the parents that want to, you know, that want to stop any form of intervention by an NGO or the government. And really, there's only so much that a private NGO can do. That's why I'm happy that the state has taken up that type of challenge. So there are toll-free lines that are available. There are people and NGOs that are available. All you need to do is have access and ensure that you teach the child some of these things. Like we have an emergency number in Lagos. I do that periodically. I talk to my children. Okay, what's the Lagos State emergency number? Very good. Why do you call the emergency number? What instances can you call the emergency number? And they give me feedback. Things as simple as, oh, we've locked outside, there's a fire going on, this has happened, maybe mommy or daddy has collapsed and they are unresponsive and things like that. So it's very important that we also share details like that with the children. We understand that this time, for some children, school is actually a safe haven. The fact that they get to leave the comfort of the home and go to school is a safe haven for them. So some children right now, the fact that, this lockdown is happening and they are cooped up at home, it's a bigger problem for them. That is why we keep preaching about adults being trusted. There's something called a trusted adult. When we talk to children, we tell them, if anybody or anything is making you uncomfortable, talk to a trusted adult. It's not compulsory that your parents are the trusted adults. Your parents could be the ones penetrating the crime. So a trusted adult is that adult you can go to without fear of judgment. That adult that will listen to you, give feedback, and take appropriate steps towards ensuring that the problem that you've come with, is taken off your hands, and then you can be better comfortable wherever it is that you are. So please, let's learn to be trusted adults. It takes an entire village to raise a child. It's an African proverb, and I love it. I always talk about it anytime I'm talking to parents. It takes an entire village to raise a child. Everybody is involved. So don't think, oh, after all, it's not my child. It's somebody else's child. No. That's somebody else's child that you've left.
Or don't count on the village. The reason why we are here is that you can't afford to count on the village because the village has its own problems. Right.
Oh, well, that's true. But hey.
I would just like to, because we have a few minutes to go. So before I hand over to Mrs. Ajala, the convener, to round off with remarks, I would like each of our panelists to just tell us three things. There are three things that we can act on immediately. After these, three things that you will recommend that parents do, what they can do this week. Today is Children's Day in Nigeria. What are the three things you are going to change in terms of your behavior, your attitude, or action, towards ensuring that your children are safe online? Because they are there already. You can't put the genie back into the bottle. It's out. So we need to now see how we can make the best use of the time that we are in. So I'll start with Mr. Lambo, and then I'll go to Mrs. Odeneye, and then I will end with Mr. Olubile. So just three things, 3 points, that 3-point agenda each parent should cultivate.
Thank you. I don't know if I can I'll be setting a low bar high by being the first to comment on those three things, but I'll try. So the first one, I think, is to share this recording. This session is being recorded. It's a free session. I mean, the knowledge we're imparting and the stuff we're sharing could be a complete game changer for some families, for some parents, for some children. It could literally transform their lives and save them a lot of headaches and a lot of avoid these pitfalls of what I call the wild, wild web. So I would say first thing would be to share the recording link. Afenoid will be providing the link. Share with as many people as possible, whether they have children or not. Everybody needs to be aware of all these things we've talked about. So the second thing would be really model what you want your children to become. So I've had opportunities, even as a cybersecurity guy, to go on the dark side. A couple of years back, I was being recruited by somebody who wanted me to do some work that literally I knew was illegal because I had the hacking skills back then. this person was presented a really good show. We had a lunch. It was supposed to be an interview. It was at a really nice restaurant in London. And they started talking about the work and the fact that, I'll be making 6 figures and I don't have to work. I only work, maybe 1 or 2 projects a month. And then they actually talked about the work I was going to be doing. And it was almost like a private investigator, but targeting high net worth people that have been hired to snoop on, somebody wants to snoop on their spouse because they think they're stepping out on them. And then the guy literally told me, it's not really illegal. It's like a gray area. And I'm like, actually, it is illegal. And I wasn't sure if they were just trying to test me to see whether I was willing to compromise my values. But I literally walked away from that meeting and I said, don't bother contacting me. I'll contact you if I'm interested, but please do not contact me again. And the only reason why I was able to do that is the money sounded really good. The job sounded too easy. But because of my values, I already knew I'll be crossing the line if I ended up working for this individual. And for all I know, this could have been somebody from Scotland Yard, So, just trying to figure out who I really am and what I could be up to. So I don't know, but I still felt like it was so easy for me to not cross that line. And I've had so many experiences in my career where I just refuse to cross the line. Whether it's a blue collar thing or just outright, criminal activity, I just don't, no amount of money would make me cross the line. The skills I have, I chose to use it for good. Almost 35 years ago, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. It's too late for me to turn back. So I think that's why I would say the impact of the values we put in our kids. First of all, if I ever decided to go on the bad side, I'll have to change my last name because my family wouldn't want me to be associated with them, and I really like my last name, so I don't want to change it. So the third one I'll say, so the second one is model that you want your children to have and the values. The third one is just be aware, be tech savvy, don't be a techie. If you have young children and they're on Instagram, social media, join those platforms, right? Because you'll be amazed to find out about your children through those platforms. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you, sir.
No
Mrs.
problem.
Odeneye.
Yes. So 3 things I want us to take away from here. 1, let's open discussions. Talk. It's time to talk. If you've not started the talk, this is the time that you need to start the talk. So let's open up the conversations. Let's start having those discussions. Let them know all the risks that are available there, all the threats that they can be exposed to, how oversharing or sharing personal information, things like that can hamper the future. So let's open up the discussions. Let's start to talk. And number 2, I will say, teach privacy. Personal information is the new gold. Data is the new gold. Data is the new gold. So let's teach privacy. Let's teach children to value personal information. Let them treat it like currency. Value it, protect it, identity things you don't want to know what people can do if they get a hold of your data. So please, let's also talk privacy. Let's teach privacy. Let's tell them the importance of keeping personal information safe. And then 3, I would also talk about parental controls. For those of us who haven't started using some of these parental controls, please, let's look at the ones that are applicable with the ages of our children and all of that. Every social media application has privacy settings. Let us learn to use them. And then cybersecurity awareness is our collective responsibility. That's how I'm going to end. It involves everybody. We all have a role to play. So please, let us play our part. Be the parent, set the boundaries, set the rules, and please be the trusted adult. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like that. Be the trusted adult. that echoes what Mr. Lambo said about model what you want your children to be. So it's leadership by example. Don't just tell them what to do.
Show
Tell
it.
them, show, demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Show it. What you would not want them to do, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Okay. And then that takes me to Ambassador Olugbile. You want to add one or two tips as we round off this session today?
Everyone has the responsibility to safeguard their child, their children, whatever, because within the system itself, you have the kid version of most of the program that you have. It's always important to align the interest of the child to their talents. Then if you understand the talent of your child, align his talents to what can be harnessed on the internet. Like, for example, I have a child that loves music. What I did was to install a YouTube Kid version. Then I ensure that I properly guided her to go to that music, the session of the music that could impact her, and she's been doing great. I also have another child that is interested in being a chef. She goes to where they prepare food, and the person has been doing great. So there are fantastic things that we can do to safeguard our child, our children, and also guide them properly to engage their challenge for productive values. That is the most important thing I will advocate for. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll put Mr. Olugbile's email address. It's solubile@icloud.com. Thank you very much for your participation. I think we need to run very quickly. We don't have all the time for all the discussion. Mrs. Odeneye, thank you very much. We really appreciate your coming. Mr. Lambo, thank you again. And I will now hand over to Mrs. Ajala for closing. Thank you everyone for participating. We hope to see you again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Koyemi Onifade. Thank you, Mr. Lambo. Thank you, my friend Olamide Odeneye. Thank you to Ambassador Olusegun Olugbile. So grateful to you all, and to our beautiful attendees. Thank you. You've made this worth it. And I've shared my email address. Please feel free to drop us an email, question, comments, contributions that you may have. We will definitely have another session like this soon. Believe me, we won't wait till Children's Day next year before we have something like this. And we also hope to host something that is along the lines of information security for grown-ups now. A child is safe only as much as his or her parent is safe. There's that protection that the child gains or has from his or her parent. And so we'll be looking more at communicating this to our audience. Thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to send the email to me and to Mr. Olugbile, john@afenoid.com. So I think we can call it a day now, and it's been a wonderful session. Thank you so much, our dear panelists. We want you to quickly complete the polls just before you sign out. We can't vote, hosts and panelists can vote, of course, but then we want our beautiful attendees to do this so that we get more feedback on how we can do this better. And hopefully the next time we'll have a session like this, we'll be glad to have you join us. Thank you, and happy Children's Day to all the kids out there. We love you, and we're here for you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, the Afenoid team. Thank you, Madam Odeneye, and I've forgotten the other gentleman's name.
Mr. Olugbile.
Mr. Olugbile. Yeah. So thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be on the panel. Thank you, and happy Children's Day.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lambo. I hope to get your email from the organizers, I think we should just keep this conversation going. Usually it's always interesting like that when we get to meet like this. So I'll get your email and I would be reaching out to you shortly.
No problem. No problem. Thank you so much.
Insight.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you.